Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about three inventions for democracy. Now, these inventions I came up with when I was trying to answer the questions such as who would police the police, how do you make sure your government isn't corrupt, and how do you make sure your politicians always want to represent the people. Now, the first of these questions, who will police the police, is basically where the idea came from. It's, it can be transferred over to democracy, and it's probably best worked into democracy rather. Well, it would also work very well for the police force as well. Now, the idea I originally came up with was to have two police forces that competed with each other to basically do the better job, and at the end of the year the better police force would get a bonus in their package or something like that. But I started thinking that it would work probably really well for democracy, whereas if you voted in two governments simultaneously and gave them an equal share of the taxes, and they would have to compete with each other to actually have the better government and represent the people better and also work for the people better, so that basically provide better goods and services for the people. Now, the two democracies would compete with each other, or the two governments would compete with each other to provide that better service. And maybe at the end of the year you could vote for who did the best job, and either they'd get a bonus in their package, their money at the end of the year, or the better government might not have to be re-elected that year, and the other government would have to face elections, something along those lines. Now, it would also mean that the governments would keep each other in check, because it'd be in their interest to point out corruption in the opposite government. It'd always be in their interest to sort of investigate the other government. So they'd always be putting in like maybe internal affairs in the other governments to make sure that they basically keep the line, so that at the end of the year that the government with the least amount of corruption would probably be the one most likely to get the best vote at the end of the year. Now, you could have maybe 4 or 5 different subjects that you vote for them on to give bonuses in their packages or whatnot. Now, there should also be kind of departments in the government. Like, you do have departments in the government, but each department should be sort of elected by the people, like the Department of, say, Transportation, or the Department of whatever, Department of Electricity or something like that. Now, the second question I came up with was basically, how do you make sure that your government is always represents the people? Now, to do this, I always felt that with democracy you get 4 years of basically tyranny. Um, Now, with that tyranny, the government can do anything for 4 years and not be held accountable by the people, because the government is basically doesn't have to face any votes or anything like this. So I came up with the idea of the anti-vote. Now, I actually didn't invent this. I thought I did, but I actually didn't invent it. The Greeks originally invented it when they invented democracy. And the anti-vote is the ability to vote out the politician you voted in at any time during his reign. So his job then would to be always do what is best for those people, rather than representing whatever he wants to represent during that time. He would have to represent what the people want him to represent. Otherwise, they would kick him out and they'd put someone else in power that would basically represent the people. So the anti-vote, or the vote out vote, is probably very important to democracy. Otherwise, what you get is you basically elect someone, and then for 4 years they can do whatever they want, and then they face re-election. Now, if you get a government that doesn't really have any vested interest in staying in power after those 4 years, just wants to make all its changes that suits itself for those 4 years, you're not going to be able to have any power over what he has to do. So to make sure that the government always represent the people, you get the anti-vote. Everyone gets an anti-vote, and if that equals or is within a certain range of his tally of votes, he gets voted out. So democracy will always be able to vote out anyone that gets into power. Now, the third idea was basically, it's not really an invention, but it's more kind of like a mandate for the government, what their responsibility is. Now, democracy, in my idea, should be basically is one of the greater systems mankind has ever invented. Now, no, I'm not saying democracy is always right, but what it's meant to do is it's meant to always look after the majority of people, and in that way, it is always the best system. Now, how you would make sure that it is not corrupted, the question of how do you keep your government from being corrupted, is you have to always make sure that your government is the highest power in the land. Now, what's happening now is that things are starting to shift and other forces are starting to take over the government. You're finding that people are becoming richer than the government, and it's kind of almost turning into kingdoms again, a system of kingdoms where the control of the government is no longer in the hands of the people. Now, to make sure that basically the government is always the highest power in the land, in fairness, it should always be the richest power in the land. It should always have to basically be monitored by, like, so all the decisions that it makes can be monitored by the people, because that's what its job is to do, is to represent the people. So there are two things to make sure that the government is like that. My dad always would say that as well, that government should be the highest power in the land. He came up with that invention, really. So that's basically the third point. It's not really an invention, it's more a mandate, that the government is the highest power in the land because it is the only democratic power. So it's the only power that is there to represent the people. So ideally, the majority rule, which is what democracy is, should always be the highest power in the land. And the only way to do that is to make sure that democracy is the highest power in the land, and to make sure that no one can influence a politician. So maybe have the politician always, every decision they make and everyone they talk to in the political circle, have it monitored to make sure that they're always fair and they always make their decision based on what's right for the people. So that's basically the three inventions. Competitive democracy, which makes sure that the governments basically always have to provide a better service by competing with each other. The second one is the anti-vote, or the ability to vote out a corrupt politician or someone that you consider not doing a good enough job. And the third one is to make sure that democracy is always the highest power in the land, and maybe create a department in government just for that purpose, to basically the department of upholding democracy, or the department of making sure that everyone else in government is fair, basically. So they're the three ideas. Throw up a like or subscribe. Thanks for watching.